Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
Erin Hyder.
Ben Sorensen.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to do a little bit of an introduction, a background before we dive in, but I want to share how super excited I am to be able to pick your brain. For anybody listening, currently, Erin is the assistant city manager for the City of Durango. She's also, though, an athlete and a mom and an adventurer and a community leader and so many other things, so many other hats that you wear. But the other cool thing, and one thing I'm interested to chat about, is you have an incredibly impressive resume from an HR perspective. I was going to make a joke that, like, you've been the HR person for pretty much every big company in Durango.
A lot of them.
Yeah. And Erin and I, we originally met, I guess it was last spring, on it was the Fort Lewis College Athletics life skills board.
Yeah, for the athletes, right?
Yeah, and there was some. I was telling you off camera. Now you had some answers during that panel that even I had takeaways from. So anyway, all of that to say, I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so excited that you're letting me bend your ear for a little while and pick your brain, because there's so much in there, and I hope I can, pull some of it out. Do you mind, just to get us started, do you mind giving me your backstory? I'm particularly interested in how you went from these really, I'll call them great HR roles, to, assistant city manager, and sort of from a professional perspective, how that all started and how you ended up where you are.
Sure thing. Well, first off, I'm super stoked to be here after watching a bunch of your episodes, and so really stoked to have the opportunity to have the conversation today. So I went to Fort Lewis. I was a student athlete there, and I kind of joked that I should have had bigger aspirations, because not about Fort Lewis, but I have an accounting degree from Fort Lewis, and I remember like my third year, you had to go around the room and all these accounting students, and you had to like list off what your aspirations were, right? And, a bunch of my peers were like, I want to be a controller. I want to be a CFO. I want to be an accountant. And I was like, I want a year-round job at a ski area. And I figured this is the way to do it.
Right.
So I worked as a seasonal employee at Purgatory while I was going to school here for 4 years. And after I graduated, there was a role at Purgatory in the payroll department in the accounting team. And so after I graduated, I started working in payroll at Purgatory. We briefly left town to Missoula, Montana for about 10 months. And the lack of sunshine and the inversions were a little bit hard for me in particular. So we moved back. And I took another job at Purgatory, and I was the benefits manager. And then kind of, things happen in big organizations where there's opportunities, and I quickly became the HR manager, then the HR director. And I was at, Purg proper, I want to say for 16 of my 20 years.
Wow.
And then once James, purchased Purgatory and the creation of Mountain Capital Partners came about, there's an opportunity for me to move into more of a corporate-wide HR role, where I supported the HR organizations at all the individual resorts, and then moved into an HR leadership role for Mountain Capital Partners. So I was with the organization overall for 20 years.
Wow.
And loved it. There's so many dynamic things about the ski industry, and the variability and the seasonality and like the complexity that is such in the ski industry and the hospitality industry. And I wasn't really looking for a new job. I was looking for an opportunity where I could branch out of HR. I have an accounting background, so I have an analytical, kind of systematic kind of approach to doing things, and I have my people and HR kind of skills. And I was like, well, what can I do that would have a broader scope in an organization? And I always want to do things where I can make a difference, and I think that's important and be involved in the community. And when Jose Madrigal, our current city manager, he was hired on in 2020. I had the opportunity to meet him soon after he started, and he was looking for an HR director. And, I had shared, I'm like, I really appreciate the opportunity, but I'm stoked with what I'm doing. I'm not in the day-to-day. But if there's ever an opportunity maybe to do a little bit more in the future, like I'd like to continue the conversation. And so long story short, that's how I ended up at the city. And really there was a point too that I had a personal reflection of like, is there an opportunity for me to be in a role that's outside of the private sector, serving folks, through skiing in a broader community sense. And so that definitely caught my interest. And that's where I've been. So I was the HR lead, and then I was a managing director, and I had a couple different departments for a while before I moved into the assistant city manager role about a year and a half ago. So
Is it just so different going from, because I got to imagine, obviously a background in accounting, studied accounting, and then moving into HR, which has got to be quite a bit different anyway, and then into the assistant city manager role. Are you feeling like, because now I'd imagine you're back to more of some of the analytical financial stuff, or not really?
not really. So first off, there's a lot more similarities between the ski industry and municipal government.
Interesting.
That you might not think. The operations are very complex, and they're very, even the ski resorts offer anything from a utilities company to running the lifts to running food and beverage to having like a homeowners association.
Yeah.
So the variability in the operations and the services they provide is pretty wide. Same with the city. We offer everything, and we provide services for everything from picking up trash to, running Chapman Hill and, our development processes in conjunction with our community development team. So those similarities are like maybe not as easy to see initially, but there's actually a lot of, they're pretty similar. I think the other piece is to like both organizations that I've worked with have dedicated, committed folks to delivering superior customer service. And, in municipal government work, like most people their first priority is they're there because they want to serve their community. Same with the customer service delivery and the hospitality and the resort industry. And then I think we all know that everybody has an opinion on how to do it best, either operating a ski area or running a city.
Of course.
So there are a lot of similarities. And my role is, I don't have to be the expert in any of the departments that I directly partner with. So obviously my primary partner is our city manager. But right now I have 6 departments that, I consider them in my little nest, and I'm partnering with them as we elevate and continue to improve in the operations of those departments. So I don't do a lot of the I don't have to know a lot of the details, although I know a lot of details, right? But really, I work with those departments and the direction and leadership of those departments.
Right. Have you always, because one of the things it was clear when we were sitting on that panel together, some of the leadership qualities about you, which I think, on the surface, maybe people don't see that. Like you even just talked about all these other complexities with your job that, who would have known. From the HR world and moving into the assistant city manager world, have you always had those kind of leadership tendencies, or where did that, because it seems like right now in your current role, really what you are is, you're a leader. You're leading these different departments and, the bigger picture side of it. Is that new for you, or have you always had kind of worn that leadership hat and been attracted to it? And the reason I ask is because it seems like you definitely have, the true leadership personality traits. And so I'm just kind of curious about when that, presented itself in your career.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I don't know if I've always thought of myself as a true leader.
Interesting.
But when I think about it, I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I've always been involved in team sports And I think there's so much about sport that provides like real life lessons and like the opportunity to serve as a leader regardless of what role you're in. Um, and if I really like to be in the middle of something, like
Like, you just like to be involved?
I like to be involved, or like, I kind of, I mean, I think that's why I liked HR a lot, because I was kind of in the middle of all the different pieces
Yeah.
that are like kind of happening either with employees or the organization, or how do we get folks to shift with a new like policy, but see both sides of the intention between the employees and the employer. I mean, heck, when I played softball as a kid, I always wanted to play shortstop or catcher or first base, anywhere where you're going to get the ball all the time. I didn't want to play where maybe the ball would come to me. It's like I wanted to be like in the middle of it. So I think that's like my personality is I like being involved in whatever is happening.
I'm going to recruit you to be on our softball team. So remember after this that now you're in trouble.
Yeah, we were champions. I'm just going to say I played on the community development team the last 2 years, and we were the rec league co-ed champions.
Love it.
All
go
right. Wombats.
I think we're 0 for 10, so we didn't win a single game last year. But
yeah.
So I'll work on my recruitment skills, afterwards. Sure. That's interesting to know, the kind of being involved. I can see why that would be attractive from a personality trait of like that middle level involvement of kind of seeing all of the different pieces and that different perspective, especially from an HR role. Mm-hmm. You're seeing the company perspective, leadership and things like that, but also ground level employees and all of that. And then coming from your background in team sports, it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, and I think, I recognize, like, I like to be kind of at that sweet spot, and I think that's where I have the most impact and the most influence. Like, I don't necessarily aspire to be, like, a CEO or really, the top person, because I think leaders can be effective. They're most effective where in their spot they feel the most effective, and really can be in any level of the organization, or any level of a team, or any level of some kind of family unit. So I think that's how I embrace that, and I encourage others to embrace the same way too.
Right.
Yeah.
When we were on the panel, I'm going to butcher it, and actually, in fact, now I'm feeling nervous. I hope it was you who said this, so we'll see if it was or not. But something to the extent of never on course, but always on track, or something like that. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Was that you? Was that somebody else on the panel?
I think that was somebody else that said that, but I mean, it resonates.
I just was thinking more from, when you're managing and kind of that idea of that connector, the internal being involved person.
Yeah.
I'd imagine that you have to have kind of different perspectives. Like at your current role right now, you've got these other different departments, and that everybody wants a certain thing, and not all of it can happen at the same time or in the same way. That's what I was getting at, is how do you manage the overall perspective from from your current position right now? I'm sure there are, with the city manager having goals and, KPIs and things like that, but the other departments have their own. How do you manage all of that and, keeping it all on track and I don't know what gets priority and things like that.
Right. Well, some days it doesn't.
Yeah, fair answer.
That just has to be real, and that's part of your perspective you have to lead with. Is every day is not going to go as you anticipate it to go or as you need it to go, but it's all moving. It's all forward progress, and something's going to come out of that maybe even opens up a different door that you didn't even know you were looking for. In my current role, I'll say that our city manager has done such a great job of defining where we're going and really set the tone for all of us to be on board and to collectively know like we're moving together. And so those individual departments, it doesn't serve us when we have independent wishes and desires if it doesn't align with the overall organizational goals and objectives. So part of my role is like kind of, as we partner and when things come up is like how do we reframe like something that comes up in a very specific department to eventually realign and make sure we're in a line to that overall organizational goal. just might look a little different on how we get there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. Like when you're talking about how do you get everybody to kind of move in the same direction, is we can't apply the same methodology to every person and into every team. And you have to, see what works best for the folks that you're working with and what's most meaningful to them. And in the way, it's how you do it and it's what you do. So, and I always believe that how we do things is way more important than what we do. And so we talk a lot about that in partnership with, the folks that I have the privilege of partnering with.
How we do things is more important than what we do.
I believe so.
I love that. Tell me more about that. Like what do you mean by how we do things? The intention behind things, is it analytical from a process perspective? What does how mean?
Yeah, how to me is that human connection and the power of human connection, and how is our culture, how is our individual interactions we have with others. You talk about process to me fits in the what, tasks fit in the what, things we do on a daily basis that fits in the what. But if you're really good at the what, but you can't really work with others, or you can't do it in a way that other people want to be on your team, it doesn't matter what you do if you have nobody else coming along with you. Doesn't matter what service we deliver to our residents of our city, if the person delivering that service has a bad, interaction with a resident, and that resident feels like, well, that was a crappy experience, right? So that's what people remember. It's how they're treated, not necessarily what they get or what service they get, but they always leave with, well, that was a really, that person told me no, but you know what? They were really nice about it, and I understand it, and that's more meaningful.
I love that. I always say that culture eats process for breakfast.
Totally. Culture is our competitive edge.
Yeah.
In any organization, I think. So, but to me, that if you simplify it down, it's the how.
Yeah.
That we really do things.
How, from a softer perspective of how it makes people feel, the culture behind it. I get that. That resonates with me in an enormous way. I've always been the type of guy that operates on emotion. I've always I tell people around here all the time, how we make people feel matters. I say that all the time, even with we have to be careful with how we word our emails, and that sounded pretty short and abrasive. It's well, I was just no. That's that stuff matters. How matters. So I'm curious, where did you learn that, and now how are you implementing that into your current role with the city? Because it's so important, and I think from a government perspective, I think sometimes that's lost, at least for somebody like myself that I interact very transactionally with city things. It's very cut and dry, but I think that's such an important perspective. So I just would love to hear more about where that came from, and kind of how you work to bring that into the city departments.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I know how, where it came from. I think maybe through observation and my, different life experiences of really being able to see, when things are effective and when they're not, and what's kind of the key theme between that. I know it matters to me personally, and so sometimes oftentimes what we do is we replicate what we want to be, how we want to be treated, and I think maybe that's a piece of it. But beyond that, I'm not sure. And really how I choose to do it is I think I try to lead by example and be very conscious of that, and kind of weave the pieces of conversation through the conversations we're having organically in the conversation already. What you elevate matters. And so that's what I choose to often elevate. Now, don't get me wrong. I like to get stuff done.
Oh, sure.
And I like to win. And I like to, accomplish the task. And I like my teams. And my teams, I think they know that. If we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. But so much of the other how comes in that, the commitment to others, the responsibility we have, the accountability we have, all those kind of pieces. Those are the pieces that help you win and
Right.
help you achieve the tasks that you're set out to go and do.
Which probably comes from sports.
So, oh man, sports is like it provides so many life lessons and so many like people lessons that like you don't even know you're like having those opportunities to learn that like when it's happening right there. I think the greatest opportunity we have is to be part of something greater than ourselves. So organized sports, right? Or it could be like theater, or it could be, some kind of like club that you're choosing to be part of. And you're part of the overall system, and what you do and what you contribute matters, and you get immediate feedback.
Yeah.
When you don't show up in the way that is supporting your team. I mean, that's what sports is.
Right.
Like, right? If you like make a poor decision, it's pretty immediate. If like, you're scored on in soccer, well, shoot, I didn't do my part, right? So I love the immediate feedback of sports, and it gives us the ability to adjust and adapt and real quickly. Because if we don't,
in real time,
then the same thing's going to happen again. And that's oftentimes, I think, in organizations, sometimes that adjustment and that refinement is a little bit slower.
Right.
Because that feedback's not always as immediate.
Do you think that's a good or a bad thing? Because I come from a huge sports background. I played football at Fort Lewis. We were talking about ultra running, but off camera, and I'm sure we're going to get there too. But part of me really appreciates the directness that comes from sports, like coachability. And I mean, as we speak right now, my son's at baseball practice, and then he's going to wrestling practice right after. So I told my wife to document, that we got 2 sports today happening in our household, which is the first time ever. But like watching him, be a coachable kid versus some of the delicacy that I think I have to bring to the professional world. I would love your perspective on the difference and, pros and cons or because sometimes I think it's so nice in the sporting world by nature, it has to be fast, direct, direct. We were, I was just telling you, I ran Buffalo Run 100 last weekend, and we were watching some of the videos, coming into aid stations.
Yeah.
And I was like, I almost sound abrasive because I'm coming in like I need boom, boom, boom. And it's, there's no room to sugarcoat it. I don't know. What just thoughts of like how you marry those worlds in the professional world, knowing how valuable that, that direct instant feedback is from the sport world.
Yeah. Well, clarity is kindness.
Ooh.
And
you must know Susie.
I do know Susie, and I know Brene Brown. So
is that a Brene Brown?
Yes. I mean, like clear
Okay.
is kind, right? I wholeheartedly believe that because I fail at being almost too direct. And that is probably from being a product of being like the receiving end of very directness for, the majority of my life.
Right.
And having to respond and not take personal offense to it. That's harder to do sometimes, right? As we all know. But I think when you're providing feedback in general, like being clear, being timely, making it relevant, all those things are super important in the space and when someone's available to receive that space. So I think you have to be able to assess the situation when you're talking about providing that type of feedback, like in the workspace, because you got to also like balance, like, where is this person out? What's going on with them? Are we like, what environment are we in with like a large group of people, a small group of people? Are they ready for like some of this feedback? Can I receive the feedback back? So I think that's like the art.
Right. Context matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good point because, in the sport world, the context is that everybody's ready for direct, quick, actionable feedback, generally speaking.
Yeah, and everybody usually wants to win.
Right.
Right. So there is everybody and I might be a little bit competitive. So like being in an environment where you all know like we're here to win. So like that's what I have to adjust if we're here to win. So I think that's a piece of it too. That space is different in the workspace.
Yeah.
because we all have our different reasons of why we're at work.
Right.
And we have our different motivations and we have our different aspirations.
Yeah.
And
How,
so that's
how do you
important.
manage that? You know, because you've got the different departments, different, you know, I mean, I'm just envisioning these layers of complexity with, you know, your position and all of that. Because with all of the different departments, you also have different people within them and different personalities. And, you know, to your point, in the sporting world, generally speaking, everybody wants to win. We all kind of have the same goal. There's nuance in the workspace with, you know, why are people here? Is somebody wanting to get promoted or, you know, make ends meet? Are they happy where they are? Are they, I would be curious from your position or your perspective, how you balance that all. I mean, do you try to have shared goals, shared, you know, outcomes that people are striving for, or are you meeting people where they're at?
Well, I think it's both. So the answer is yes. Like, we as an organization have shared goals, and we have shared KPIs, and we have shared commitments that we have over the whole organization, and we focus on delivering superior customer service, employee engagement, and strategic plan achievement. So those are like our pillars through like really everything we're doing. It's going to fall through one of those pillars or through one of those lenses. I think though, so I have, even though, you know, I partner with those 6 departments, you know, I don't have the opportunity then to work with all the employees on all the different levels of the organization within those departments. Instead, what I do, because I find a lot of value, and this is my nature, is I kind of, like, I still want to know what everybody does, and I have great perspective and great appreciation for, like, their experience and their role is so critical to our organization, but also like they have a totally different experience than like I do when I come to work. And so I try to spend a lot of time within the organization, out and about at the different like locations or the different departments, and I try to like intentionally have conversations with folks throughout the levels of the organization. And I think that's critical back to what we're doing is we're building a community of connection. And by doing so, when you have that broader community connection, you can see people as whole people. I think we're more effective as we're driving towards achieving like goals or outcomes.
Yeah.
If people are seen and they know they're valued. And gosh, we couldn't get anything done in this city if we didn't have all the folks on all of our different teams doing exactly what they do every day.
It really does take everybody.
Totally.
Building a community of connection.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Community, I think I've been reflecting on community quite a bit. I've got a presentation that's called, you know, building more than brands, using digital marketing to create community. But I think, especially nowadays, there's so much, we're more connected now than we've ever been. Yet loneliness is off the charts. Depression is off the charts. You know, the mental health struggles are off the charts. And I think that it's because people are craving an authentic connection in a community and things like that. And just to talk right about it, but one of my favorite things about the ultra running community is that it has been, for me, because I'm relatively new to the space, I've been running forever, but I've been running ultras, you know, for 18 months maybe.
Yep.
And you talk about a community that's there. Every time I run a race, I meet like true lifelong friends. It's crazy. And we connect on social media. And I ran Arches Ultra in January, and I shared a few miles with a guy named Benton. And my pacer for Buffalo Run got injured and couldn't make it at the 9th hour.
Yep.
So I put out on Instagram, and Benton's like, I'll do it. He drove all the way from Grand Junction, got there at midnight, paced me from 3 a.m. to 8 a.m.
Totally.
Just crazy. It's so cool. I'd love to hear, because I was going to ask you this question, and then I want to hear your perspective on community too. But it's also very obvious to me that your physical health has stayed a priority. You know, you choose to always, you know, you're running ultras and prioritizing exercise and sort of self-care, I'll even call it, while you've got this incredibly demanding job. You're a mom, you know, who knows what other responsibilities I have no idea about. I would love to hear why. How come? Why has that stayed such a priority for you? To still be running ultras, and because if anybody has an excuse to say they're too busy, I think that you'd be on that list. But you haven't pulled out that excuse yet.
Yeah.
Why?
So first I want to clear that like I like to win at things, but I don't ever feel like I have to win at ultra
Isn't
running.
that great too?
It's
Yeah.
like my
Well, you have to
favorite
beat
part.
yourself. Like
Yeah.
it's a competition against yourself.
Well, you got to know what's your why.
Yeah.
Like, why do I do this? Like, why? And I think that's the most critical piece with that. And for me, like, if we go about like, why do I enjoy that kind of like activity? And I started doing it because when my kids were younger, I had to figure out a way so I didn't have to hear mom. And that's not like a negative way, but like, moms often, it doesn't matter if you're like 5 rooms away and, sometimes this happens. I don't know if this happens to you, but dad could be right next door, like right next to you. And then you still hear, Mom. And my husband's always like, hey, I'm right here. What can I do for you?
My wife, I can't wait for your thought, but my wife just sent me a reel on Instagram just the other day. There was like, the differences between asks, and it was the skit of the kid asking mom for everything. Mom, where's this, where's that, what's that? And then it gets to the end and it goes, Dad, where's mom? so anyway,
Yeah.
1,000%.
Totally. But props to my husband. He's like, he hears it happen and he's like, hey, I'm right here. What can I help you?
Yeah.
So I've started not responding. But when my kids were younger, that's why like really I started into getting to like longer distances is because I was like, if I run 15 miles away from the door, I can't hear mom from here. I love a sense of adventure. I love the fact of all the places you can go, all the things you can see, all the places like in our neck of the woods that you get to explore that if you don't leave 8 miles from the trail, like you might not see very easily. It creates space for me. Like I can run through like a problem in my head and percolate it on it for like 4 hours and come back and like maybe I'm all fired up about something and I come back and at least like I've tired myself out enough that I've kind of given up on being all fired up about it anymore, but maybe I've come to a solution. And there's science behind when we put our feet to the ground and we create, it's almost like a sense of meditation for me. I love who knew you could just go out and run 50 miles? Who knew you're capable of running 50 miles or you're capable of running 100 miles, right? Like, and I think that sense of like, man, we can do hard things. If you want to, and that's the big thing. And I think that provides a lot of perspective in life. And I think there's so many analogies around like ultra running and like all the things you go through in like 12 to 18 hour day, like how many ups and downs, how many problems have you solved, how many times have you wanted to give up, but like you make a choice to keep going. And I think there's a lot of power in that of feeling and empowerment. And for me, a lot of times I am busy. So a lot of my friends, like I get to have my social aspect and my social time via running.
Right.
Because I'm not out there like breaking world records and I can go like, you got a pace where you can have like a really nice conversation, you get to explore, you get to eat snacks. I don't know, all
Nothing
that sounds
better.
great to me. I mean, it might be cooler in the morning. So, I think those are all the aspects that really get me going about doing it. And I didn't really get into longer distance running. And my soccer coach at Fort Lewis when I was there, Jamie Carrozza, she's here in town still, and I think she laughs sometimes because I was totally the kid that never made my fitness test during preseason because that wasn't my jam. I was like, well, I'm here to play soccer. I'm not here to run a 14-minute 2-mile and like that. That's not what I was like stoked about. I was stoked to play soccer, and so she kind of laughs at this point of the irony of like I wasn't.
Now you're an ultra.
I was not like the fittest person ever, and I was quite stubborn about it. And now I go out and run these longer distances, and I have a lot of enjoyment with it too. And plus, look at all the cool places you get to go.
Yeah.
So I
coolest
really
places
like
in the
that.
world.
Yeah.
I want to unpack that a little bit. You talked about, doing hard things, and we've also been talking about, different personality traits and complexities within our organizations and things like that. I've personally kind of been on a mission now of, well, inspiring people, like showing, because I am, as in terms of, I was just talking to my wife the other day because I'm still limping around the house. I'm from a genetics perspective, I'm,
Yeah.
low tier.
Yeah.
From a stubbornness perspective, I'm, as high as they come. But my point in that is that I'm so average, and have worked really, really hard at some things, but I've realized that I think we're all capable of so much more than we think.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear, you talked about, doing hard things. And, first of all, is everybody capable of that? Do you think it's something that we learn? Do you think that there's, kind of more within people from a, doing hard things perspective? And then I want to hear from you, how intentionally doing hard things, how that's impacted the other components of your life.
Yeah. So the first question, I think generally, so you have to we have to recognize that everybody has the same capabilities and the same like accessibility and the same like um, abilities, right, to do things, or mobility to do things. So I think when we put it in perspective of doing hard things, it doesn't just have to be like physically,
Right.
but anything. I think yes, humans are totally capable of doing more than probably what we do, because we can. Um, it should be a balanced approach. And sometimes I struggle, like myself, with that. Of just because my girlfriend Taylor, she always reminds me that just because you can doesn't mean you should.
That's great advice.
And she really tries to like beat that in my head sometimes.
I
I'm like,
need that advice.
yes, but you're not persuading me to do something different right now. So, but I appreciate like that you are absolutely 100% correct, and that's a good filter to have sometimes. And I think there's a piece around you have to be okay or embrace being a little bit uncomfortable. And I think a lot of us have, whether it's circumstance or privilege or, whatever it might be, like not all of us have to be uncomfortable. Some people have to be uncomfortable every day of their life based on their circumstances, right? And so, but a lot of us don't have to be. And so if we don't have to be, like, why do we need to be? But I think there's a lot of benefit of like embracing that zone of discomfort, because I think in professional life and personal growth, like, the most amount of growth happens in the space of discomfort.
Yeah.
But it's a choice, and I think that's like, and you have to be able to embrace it and see that like what benefit can come out of that, or what positive can come out of that. Now, if it doesn't serve you, then that's not, and you get to make that choice, then that's not the best thing for you. So I think around the space of like, are we capable of doing things? Heck yes. Do you want to do hard things? Like whatever it might be, if you get to have a choice, I think that all depends on the person.
Yeah.
And like really what speaks to them.
I had Dr. Doug Miller on
Oh,
a
yeah.
while back,
Yep.
psychologist, and all we talked about was out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
The benefits that happen, when we intentionally leave the comfort zone.
Yep.
And then, as it relates to ultra running, I mean, I see I'm able to manage stressors in life so much better, and work and fatigue and
Yeah.
even like hunger or little pain here
Yeah.
or whatever. It's just wild how it translates. I also, do you know, I don't know if you're familiar with Josh Rosenthal or not, Run Borderlands.
Yeah.
But I had him on the show a while back too, and he famously said that every ultra runner is at least part philosopher too. And I don't know if that's maybe because there's so much time to which one
Totally.
comes first, the philosopher or the runner. But it's just interesting to consider those parallels. And you talk about comfort. I think for some reason, for me at least, being uncomfortable feels natural. Like makes me feel alive on a different level.
Totally.
And I think, humans in general, we've been uncomfortable far longer than we've been comfortable. There's almost something about that, it just kind of, I don't know, grounds us.
Yeah. And I think there's a piece around too. Like, I think I also embrace the fact that I can be in a space of discomfort knowing that won't be forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a great, like most of us, a lot of us have we have great support around us. So I think you have to like acknowledge too that discomfort works when you're like psychologically supported, emotionally supported, like, just basic needs
Physically supported.
physically
Yeah.
supported. So that's a really important aspect too of that, which I recognize I have those. I have great support surrounding me. So I think that allows me to like really embrace that space also.
Right.
And I think that's an important piece when we talk about like the capability of discomfort and, for folks.
Yeah. What an interesting thing to think about, because, and that's also why, I mean, we talk for hours and hours and hours about the parallels with ultra running in life, but one of the things I've been trying to work on how to articulate is that there's sort of these microcosms happening of everybody's on their own journey, but we're on our own journeys together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this like alone but together complexity with, and in my case, we were talking off air, I need crew, I need support, I need pacers, like I need all the help I can get to do this. But even just with runners, it's like, you'll be running and you're all on your own journey, your own fight and battle, but it's like alone but together. And I think that applies to life in a cool way, because you had talked about the importance of, I forget exactly how you phrased it, but building a community with connection in your workspace, and how to consider that idea that we all have our own whys, all journeys and things like that, but together, and how that applies to other aspects.
And I don't know how to phrase it, but if we could see the shared energy that happens like in these communities, right? And then that energy fuels us and it fuels the larger group collectively. Like that's what it is. It's collectively shared energy that then it builds upon each other and it elevates the group. So like think about like you're running through a race and you're like going through like a long stretch and there's a couple other runners out there, but like you all know you're kind of like you're in it together even though you don't even know this person, and you can get just jazzed on the vibe, right? And so that happens like in communities and families and friendships, like when there's like a vibe that you can all like really like stick to, like it certainly like raises the vibe,
Right.
And so I think there's a lot to say around that collective energy that moves us all forward in general.
Do you think that's why you like to be involved, be the shortstop, so to speak? That you feed off of energy from those things?
Totally. Because I think too, when you're in a group, like so many great things come out of like groups that you would never think about, or you get to be involved in things you wouldn't be able to be involved as an individual. I think so. I always joke at work. They always make fun of me because they will say I'm very competitive, but actually I just like to be involved. Is how I like to rephrase that. Like I just like to participate. Like, and it's being part of something greater than just myself. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what it is for me. Like, how am I included? Like, in part of like a bigger something than me, whatever it is.
Why do you think that matters? Being involved in something bigger than you.
Well, because we're all part of something bigger than us. In any aspect of life. So a lot of folks, that could be like being part of a team, being part of a community, having a spiritual belief. Like there is this acknowledgement that like we as individuals are not like the ultimate. Like we are just a piece of this broader connectivity and group and connection and world, really. So I think it's I don't know. That's like pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Like we're just a piece and we have our one perspective and we have one experience and like, I have this skill, but somebody else has this skill and we bring these skills together. Like we can do not two times like the something cool. We can do like 3 or 4 times the something cool. So I think it's that how do we leverage that energy and that like connection with others to really do something greater than we could ever do by ourselves.
The sum of its parts becomes greater than its whole. It's
Totally.
even like you were talking about, from the city perspective, none of the initiatives are possible without everybody.
Absolutely.
And then, that probably translates to life in the community and
Absolutely.
everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
You had mentioned, your short stint in Montana,
Yeah.
and kind of being drawn back down here because of inversion and weather and things like that. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about what drew you back to. Was it a desire to leave Montana, or was it a specific desire to get back to Durango?
Um, I think it was twofold. One, I didn't feel like I was part of a community there.
Interesting.
It was hard for me to gauge. We were post college. I was working in an accounting firm where I was by far the youngest person. My husband was working at a paint store, which he had a very good friend that was working there that he knew them, but I don't know if he felt like the paint store was his greater purpose in life. It was like our purpose right then. And so I think it was like, I don't know if we feel like we're part of the community. Number one, amongst the other things, the skiing was not good that year, in case you were wondering. And it was bombed.
matters.
And it was bombed down here. So that was like this fear of missing out kind of component, because like adventure and, doing all the things is really important to my core and getting to do the things. But so I felt like I was missing out. And I think sometimes I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that the first place I lived, for a good chunk of time after I left like my childhood home was Durango. And so I still don't know if it was a good thing that like I found such a spectacular community, which really speaks to me as a person, and I'm drawn to all the aspects, right, of our community and why it's so great. If that was the first place I landed, or if it would have been better had I been somewhere else that was maybe not as
great.
cool. And then so I would have been willing to go and seek out other places that I wanted to live, because, now we've been here 25 years.
And you're stuck.
I mean, no one's stuck.
Kind of, though.
But I certainly have no desire to leave.
Yeah.
Because, now my kids were born here, and they're, going through school, and they have their communities, and, we have all of our different connections through all the different types of people we've met through the, 25 years that we've been here.
When you mentioned that sort of curiosity of, what would have been better straight in Durango or somewhere else, is that because you think there was maybe potentially other, I'll call it career opportunities outside of Durango, or just from a different perspective? Like when you're, I don't know, curiosity, kind of exploring that, is that what that's from? Is that you're wondering if the Durango brought its own things, adventures and outdoor lifestyle and things like that, and other places maybe could have had other career opportunities? That's sort of the difference that you ponder?
I mean, I hope I don't regret saying this, but I've never been super driven to go out and seek the best career and sacrifice what's most meaningful to me. And so I've always prioritized living in a space like Durango, with the vibe, the access, the prioritization on the things that we hold so dear here in our community of what's important. The community, we live in a community that's very aligned, but also very diverse. And I feel like for the most of the time, that's very well respected and desired, a sense of differing opinions and diversity. And so, and really the access to being outside.
Adventures.
Just being outside. I mean, I can, I'm stoked even just to, walk my dog, in the access road behind my house. And, I mean, not everybody, we forget. My kids do not know that this is normal. I mean, this is not normal. Their experience is not normal for the majority of the world of, all the opportunities and the access and the fresh air and, the sunlight. And we have 4 seasons. We have 5 if you count the wind.
Right, yeah.
The wind season.
And mud season.
And we're, diving into wind season, which...
I relate to that so much. I'm a very driven individual. I also, though, have had a shift in priorities, especially since I've become a father and I'm raising a family and things like that, to way oversimplify it. Now I just want everyone to be happy. And it's been interesting because I've had conversations with my dad at length about it, and, looked at life paths that loved ones have taken, and, hard charging career, chasing money, not. And I've tried to find some balance in terms of, the need to make a good living, but also want to live a good life. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because you said something that resonates with me in such a big way. Just do all the things.
I want to do all of them.
All of them. But it makes me wonder because you seem, I don't know you well, but you seem fulfilled. You seem happy.
Absolutely.
You seem like, you like your life. I mean, and it's interesting to think about like where that comes from. I think that for me at least, certainly some level of financial security has helped. Like not paycheck to paycheck, thank goodness. And I'm so grateful for all of that. But I went to a whole nother level of happiness when I started prioritizing my mental health, my physical health, doing all the things. It's just so interesting because I've been telling my wife this forever is I want to live a rich life. I want to experience stuff. And I feel like so much of it is showing up and trying the thing, doing, the thing. So it seems like, and don't let me like put words in your mouth, but when you're kind of talking about that idea of would it have been better to start somewhere else or here or whatever, I'm just kind of curious about where that lands on the balance of, the healthy lifestyle, career, opportunities, and from your perspective of where sort of happiness comes from, where that balance lies, where you've found it, because it seems like you found some level of it.
I mean, I'm super stoked on life, and I have a lot to be
I love
grateful
that you
for.
use the word stoked, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
Chase is from California, my account manager that you'd met when you got here.
Yeah.
And because of that, we use the word stoked in the office all the time. So anyway, keep it up.
Every morning you got to bring your cup and a half stoke into work to like really roll into your day. No, but I'm incredibly like grateful for, like we have our kids are healthy, our family's healthy. We've had great opportunity here in town. I think back to your point though, like I think what it comes down to is knowing what's most important to you in how you can make it happen. And not having differing or conflicting kind of goals in life that don't serve each other. And so, I don't know, like, I'm not gonna leave life with, like, a really flush, like, 401k and retirement plan or, like, 2 houses
No
or 3
yacht.
houses, no yacht. I mean, we have a raft or 2
That counts.
and a drift boat. But, like, those material things have never been, like, super motivating for me. And I'm very motivated by like experiencing like the world around me, and that's really fulfilling and meaningful to me. And I think I've just had to trust that, if I do the hard work and I do the preparation and I am like generally like like do the right things, like all the other things can come along with it as long as it's balanced. So I don't know if that would be like the secret recipe to happiness, right? For individuals, what speaks to them the most, what's most meaningful to them.
Yeah.
But like, no, I don't know. Like, experiences are super important to me. And spending if I have money to spend to do something or to buy something, I'm gonna do something.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm going to go visit somewhere. We had a spectacular trip, like, just this past winter that, like, I don't know. Like, I would do that any day. Like, you want to go somewhere tomorrow? Sign me up.
Right.
Like, I'm generally of, like, if I'm the instigator in a group, it's like, oh, you said we're going to do that? Okay, well, now we're going to do it. Yeah. We're going to go make this happen.
We're so similar in that. I tell my friends all the time, like, well, then let's book it.
Let's do it.
Like, right now, tell me the weekend and I'll be there. And sometimes I get frustrated because it's like, well, I'm like, no, literally, just tell me the weekend and we'll book it. A thought and then a question. We've talked about how unique of a place Durango is. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned sort of this idea between like buying things and doing things. One of the things I've observed that has made this place so special that I think is that doesn't get the credit it deserves. Like everybody talks about our outdoor opportunities and, that's apparent, right? I mean, mm-hmm. I literally leave my office and trail run from my office. It's incredible.
Right.
But what I think sometimes people overlook is the lack of buying things that happens here in terms of like I'm clueless to trends and stuff and what's the thing to have for the thing. I don't even know.
Right.
And I think that maybe contributes to the ability to find that balance between the sort of career financial well-being and health, wellness, outdoor well-being. And I'm so grateful for that because, I there's loved ones in my life that, next door, I don't know, the keeping up with the Joneses is a very real thing. I think that's overlooked sometimes because we focus on how great our outdoor opportunities are.
Yep.
But I think from a cultural perspective, it's a lot of people that want to experience stuff versus buying stuff, which just makes it neat, But what I was going to ask is, you've got two kids, I believe 17 and 14, but you have high school aged kids, if I'm not
Yep, I have
mistaken.
an 8th grader and a junior.
Okay, great.
Yep.
When you're looking at, kind of your responsibility as a mother and the skills that you're giving them to kind of go out into this world, because that's on the horizon now for you, what are you, and, we kind of talked about these ideas of, chasing money, chasing lifestyle, or whatever it might be, trying to find that balance. What's your advice to them? What do you hope for them? I mean, are you there? Do you feel like you're giving them the tools to find this fulfillment and happiness that you're finding? I'm just curious, like, my kids are not nearly as old, and so they're just along for the ride, and they enjoy every second of it. But would love to hear, as you're kind of, I don't know, getting ready that they'll be on their own, how you're hoping they balance those things.
Well, I certainly hope they do. I mean, I think our role as parents, our greatest influence is how do we help our kids through opportunities that come up right now where they can learn a lesson in a safe way, in a supported way, where they can develop a skill to have a life skill of interacting with others, advocating for themselves, and knowing that the hard work and the hard preparation will create the opportunities for them. And so I think so I don't know how I'm doing, but,
None of us do.
Right? We don't. But, I think like being really engaged and active in conversations with your kids as they're navigating their own kind of problems or their own things that come up is not doing it for them. And instead, asking them their questions and giving them some framework to reframe where they're at so they can figure it out themselves with great support behind them. So when you talk about getting our kids ready out for the world, is I hope they have a worldly perspective, it is something I'm conscious of, I said my kids think they don't know that growing up in their life in Durango, as they have it, isn't normal for the majority. Like the fact that my kids get to pick and choose, if they don't want to go ski because it's overcast or it hasn't snowed, it's a very privileged space for them to be in. And so one thing I do worry about, and we've been very conscious of trying to create opportunities to explore different parts of even the country or the world or do things that are different here to broaden their perspective and broaden their experiences so they're well equipped to be open and able to connect with lots of different people and wherever they're at, right? And I think that's the most important skill that they can take with them as they go out in life with an empathetic approach, and they can have high expectations, but they need to have generous assumptions about other folks too. And I think that's so critical as they leave. But my kids would probably say I have high expectations. But if you're going to commit to something, the expectation is that you're going to, do that and do it in a way that allows them to grow and hopefully enjoy whatever they're doing. So we just went on over spring break. We did the initial first college tour.
Oh,
for
wow.
my junior.
Big day.
We did it via ski touring. So we went and visited 3 colleges, but we skied our way along. And I totally had this moment of realizing, oh my God, my kid's going to leave.
It's here, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about her. I'm worried about well, who am I going to hang out with?
Selfishly,
me
yeah.
and Lunch Pie, my youngest daughter, we'll be here, and like she'll get a lot more attention, right? But like we're definitely like a family. We like to do things together, and
Yeah.
so that's more like where I'm at. I'm not worried about her going out into the world, and she has great aspirations and is well prepared. I think hard worker, all those things that you hope for a kid to be. So she'll do great in the world. But it's like this realization of like, well, this is about to happen.
It's got to be terrifying.
Yeah.
We were just the other day, Nicole. So my oldest son is 6, and we had a crazy weekend. We had a wrestling tournament in Dolores, and then we went to monster trucks in Farmington. So spent 4 hours driving throughout the day to do all these things.
Yep.
And we were pretty worn out afterwards. But I was like, holy cow, we're a third of the way through it, and it made us emotional. It's like, oh my gosh, we got to cherish every second of this. And you talk about priorities and what brings me happiness.
Yeah.
I just want to spend time with them. I mean, that's all there is. Like,
right.
Adventuring, obviously, I think, makes the time even sweeter, but you don't realize, I mean, it flies.
Oh, it super flies. And like to that point, my kids both participate in Rio Rapids for soccer. So, and they have for several years. And so we get the opportunity to drive down to Bernalillo on Saturday mornings. They play 2 soccer games, and we drive back from Bernalillo. And I will admit that at times I'm like catching myself. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to do anything today. I'm going to just drive in the car.
Lost a whole Saturday.
Yeah. And then, especially probably the last year or so, I'm like, oh man, like I really enjoy this time that I get to have with either one of the kids or both the kids in the car. And like, other than whatever they're distracted by in the car, like it's an opportunity to have that connection and like that really time about, you talk about anything or they don't talk at all, but just like that sense of being together.
Yeah.
So I have really grown to really more like, I've had to reframe my perspective around exactly what you said, is this is not a chore and obligation or I'm missing out on something, but instead this is great time to capitalize on. It's not going to last forever.
Yeah. Has that made running harder? Because you had talked about, early on the stresses of early motherhood and, I'll call it running for sanity, but running for, which trust me, I've been there 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Now, though, has that changed your relationship with running or not? I mean, do you feel like it's still, I don't know, do you ever feel torn, like you need to be in 3 places at once?
Totally. And I do my best to try to be in 3 places at once, and I'm not good at that, right? So absolutely. And there are times where, I have to be a little bit more adaptable to like, yes, I intended to do this today, but actually when I realized my priority is to go spend my time doing something else, I'm going to, I'll have a balanced approach to, not feeling like I'm obligated to do one or the other all the time. So totally. And then like, I will say also the other thing is like, you can come up with a running plan, a training plan, and be like, this is what I'm going to do. And I don't know if that's ever worked for me, because then I have to be like, oh, well, I can't make that happen. So you have to be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to fit in a run here from this place. Like last week, I ran from my house to the high school soccer game.
Yeah.
Because I had to go, I was going to the soccer game. So instead of driving, I was like, well, I'll just run down there. And then that way I can get, 5 miles in real quick. But I can kind of do 2 things at once. Or I've definitely run the roads of the Bernalillo soccer complex before, like after sitting in the car for 3 hours. And so it's like, I think that's like a life skill I've had to learn too. That's super applicable like at work or in life, is like you got to be adaptable to your plans. And even though you said it was going to go that way,
never going to happen that way.
So that's that on course or off course but on track.
Right.
Right? Is like, well, this is my plan. And it didn't look like that, but I'm still on track for my goal because I was able to like shift it a little bit to make it work.
Yeah, and especially what a great perspective too when you're balancing so many things, like the demanding job, motherhood, wife, running, these personal aspirations and things like that. It's something I struggle with. It's funny that you brought that up because just recently we had a birthday party and their house was 4 miles away from our house. So I ran there and my wife drove the kids there and then had my weighted vest and then I weighted vest walked back. So I got 8 miles on the day. 4 of them were weighted. I'm like, that's a win. I got to hang out
Totally.
at the birthday party. But, you know, balancing those things is tough because I think, and I'm in a stage right now where I'm sort of struggling with it because these personal endeavors are making me the best version of myself that I can think of, which makes me a better dad and, you know, more present and things like that. But also by nature sort of takes me away, you know, from, I mean, right now I'm missing wrestling practice to podcast, but podcasting fills me up and I
Right.
learn a lot and,
Yeah.
you know, have some perspectives I get to share. So like that adaptability, I think is a great takeaway that you just, that is something I'll take from this conversation for sure, is the ability to adapt and kind of combine those priorities because they all are priorities.
Yeah. Well, isn't it the analogy of you got to put on your oxygen mask first before you help others?
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, however that looks is, you know, hopefully most of the time it works.
Right. We don't have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about what's next for you. What's on the horizon? We were talking a little bit about, you know, races. I'd love to just kind of hear from a you know, business career perspective, but also with running. What are you working towards right now?
So for running, so I feel like right now I'm the queen of the wait list. And there's a lot of like, there must be some kind of like psychological, like, you know, piece about really like you're in, but you're not
But you're not quite in. Yeah.
So, so let's see, I have the Leadville 50 in July. I'm using the Bryce Canyon 50K here in May as a training run. Then after July, I am on the Grand Traverse waitlist
Awesome.
in August. And then I am on the Javelina 100K waitlist, which I'm pretty close to the top, so I have a feeling that I'll get into that. And my girlfriends that I just went on a trip with back in January, I was like, hey, this is a party. You guys should all come, and we'll have a great girls' weekend, and I'll just run in circles. And then I'll hang out with you guys afterwards. So that's kind of the plan for this summer. Usually I've, in the past, done like more like late fall, kind of, you know, higher volume races. So we're shifting a little bit this year to see, you know, what it looks like early in the season.
Yeah.
And then career-wise, like really trying to like continuing to learn and evolve on how to do like my job that I'm in well and effectively, and you know, learn the nuances of that. I'm really excited into some performance excellence work that we're doing with the organization. I really like that type of work and really getting into systematic work. So that's like, I'm pretty engaged in that right now. So
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it.
It's so cool.
But otherwise, I have no other aspirations beyond like what I'm doing right now.
Oh, just beyond like all these great things. That's what I was gonna say. Is it's so cool to see, you know, the continued upward mobility, the continued, you know, growth mindset and improvement across the board. It's just so fun and refreshing to see. The Javelina 100 should be an awesome time.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know how I do in the like heat, but because like hot's like 70, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah, because that'll be
October.
very hot. Okay, but
Late
still,
October.
Yeah, that'll be warm.
Yeah. But I mean, all of it, like, it's not even just the races, but it's all the other places, all the other like group runs you do, all the runs you do with friends, all the kind of different places, you know, we can explore around here that like you sprinkle in to get to that point. That's really like what I really enjoy.
Doing all the things.
I like to do all the
Being
things.
involved.
Yeah,
I
like
love
to
it.
do all the things.
You clearly are meant to be a shortstop. It's great.
I might have like gotten past my shortstop prime, but now I've moved into pickleball.
There we go. Okay.
So like, which I'm super jazzed on too.
Yeah.
So.
The metaphorical shortstop.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
just being involved in it all.
Yeah.
Erin, thank you so much for being here, for giving me some of your time, because I know how incredibly valuable your time is, you know, with all the different hats that you wear. So I have my tradition. Yes. I have a gift for you. My Inspire by Example shirt.
Sweet.
Because you are inspiring by example. And I just want to share with you how refreshing your perspective is on life and fulfillment and doing all the things and living a rich life and being involved and lifting others up with you. The short few conversations I've been able to have with you have been impactful, and the example that you're leading by, and the influence that you're having on the organizations that you're involved with, and the community, and all of those great things. I just hope you know that it's important and it matters, and you're inspiring by example. So don't stop, because it's refreshing. So thank you so much for sharing some of the perspective with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, heck yeah. High five.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Ben. I've really enjoyed it and enjoyed the conversation. So thanks again.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.